Hey everybody, you're watching We the Fandom, where we discuss comic books, pop culture, and the fandom experience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content. How's it going everybody? Jacob here at We the Fandom, and in today's video I'll be doing a breakdown and review of the 5th episode of Marvel's What If, a new Marvel Disney Plus show taking us through the multiverse and giving us alternate versions of the MCU films, with this episode simply being titled What If Killmonger Rescued Tony Stark. As will be the case with all these episodes, each alternate reality will be narrated by the Watcher, voiced by Jeffrey Wright. This episode starts off in the Kunar province of Afghanistan, where Tony Stark is being escorted by Air Force security forces to the exhibition of the Jericho missile. This mirrors the opening of the first Iron Man exactly, though it's definitely weird hearing someone other than Robert Downey Jr. voice the character that looks exactly like him. He does a really good job, to be honest. It just sounds a little off. But events play out pretty much the same. The convoy is ambushed, his escorts get killed, he gets out of the car and is trying to avoid being shot when that Stark missile lands next to him. Except this time, the event that changes everything is that Killmonger from the Black Panther film shows up, who at this point was a Navy SEAL and not yet a mercenary. He throws the missile and kills all the members of the 10 Rings who were involved in the ambush. The Watcher tells us that because Tony was saved, he never builds the Iron Man suit, he never becomes an Avenger, and then he obviously never snapped Thanos away during Avengers Endgame. Again, when they showed that snapping scene, it was strange hearing the voice actor do the line there. So the Age of Iron Man never came to be. Instead, when Tony returned to the States after the attack, he had a different epiphany than his main MCU counterpart did. Instead of halting the manufacturing of weapons, he wanted to build bigger, badder weapons for the US military, which means that he remains the same drunk playboy warmonger that he always was. He also names Eric Stevens, aka Killmonger, as the security chief of Stark Industries, giving someone we know to be a villain a chance to be something more. Killmonger's first act as security chief is to reveal to everyone at the press conference that he saved Tony Stark after having been in deep cover in the 10 Rings, and while there, he discovered the plot to assassinate Tony Stark perpetrated by Obadiah Stane, showing everyone at the press conference the information. So Obadiah gets taken away right then and there, making so that he never gets the arc reactor technology and never becomes the Ironmonger. While celebrating, Stark makes Killmonger his new COO, and remember at this time that Pepper was still Tony's secretary and she was always very wary of Tony's decision making, but this time even more so, as she seems to be really suspicious of Killmonger. So she has James Rhodes investigate Killmonger's past, but he ends up coming up clean, so for now Pepper can't accuse Killmonger of anything. Also in this scene, Rhodey is wearing the wrong uniform. He's in the Air Force, which means that his blues are actually blue, unless they were meant to be dress whites. Something I kind of just nitpicked at, but anyways. Tony brings Killmonger to his workshop, shows him some technology, and they get to talking about their fathers, kind of like how their lives ended, and Tony Stark mentions that he wishes no one had to fire weapons at all, and that's when Killmonger kind of slyly brings up a thesis he had written at MIT, one involving a humanoid drone that would police the world called Project Liberator. So at this point, I was thinking, okay, it seemed like Killmonger was turning around up until this point, or perhaps he hadn't reached whatever point he was at just before the Black Panther film, but now here he is with Tony Stark, and it looks like they're going to build some Ultron-esque dictatorship to ensure safety through force. Now, when they start working on it, they have a program that records Killmonger's fighting style in order to train the drones, and Tony mentions something interesting. He says, humans lead to error and drones are better. Basically saying exactly what Anton Vanko said in Iron Man 2 when he was making the army for Justin Hammer, which is interesting. Obviously, by not having that same experience as the main MCU counterpart, Tony doesn't really trust himself to wear the armor and go out there to try to save people. Another issue that they run into is a power source. Tony mentions miniaturizing an arc reactor, but then says, no, that's stupid. And that's when Killmonger lets Tony analyze his Wakandan ring made of vibranium and says that he has the hookup for them to get enough to build the entire drone army. So Tony sends James Rhodes to meet with Ulysses Klaue, the villain from Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Black Panther, who had managed to infiltrate Wakanda and smuggle out some vibranium. And while he's demonstrating his wares to Rhodes, Klaue's men are getting taken out one by one in the background. And it's T'Challa, the Black Panther. Yes, I know this takes place like 8 or 9 years prior to Civil War, but there was actually a comic that showed Black Panther reacting to Tony Stark coming out as Iron Man, and this is actually Chadwick Boseman voicing the character again. To be fair, after taking out all of Klaue's men, he does ask Rhodes politely to let him take all the vibranium back to Wakanda, but then he and Rhodes are both hit by a sonic taser, which has a similar effect to the one that Obadiah Stane used on Tony in the first Iron Man. T'Challa is still on his feet and realizes that Killmonger is holding the gun. For a second, T'Challa is able to resist and almost gets to Killmonger, but Killmonger basically turns up the wavelength, killing T'Challa, and when when Rhodes questions him, Killmonger kills him too. That's when Klaue steps out from the shadows and reveals that he and Killmonger were in on it together, that he leaked info on the sale to Wakandan war dogs, which is why Black Panther showed up. We get a quick funeral scene for Rhodey and T'Challa, which is interesting because we are likely to see a similar scene in Black Panther 2 because of Chadwick Boseman's passing, and Marvel Studios have said that they aren't going to recast T'Challa. When Killmonger goes back to Tony with a Wakandan spear in hand, Tony reveals that Jarvis recorded everything that had happened at the botch sale, and also reveals that he had built one of the drones who attacks Killmonger, and it's funny because it has Killmonger by the throat, could have easily killed him right then and there, and it would have been over with, but instead it throws him to the ground, giving Killmonger a chance to pick up the vibranium spear and destroy the drone, and then he throws it at Tony. And when Tony, mentions there are similarities between him and Killmonger, and he had his hopes that it was going to be him and Killmonger against the world, Killmonger says, the difference between you and me is that you can't see the difference between you and me. So yes, Killmonger is still of the same ideology that basically black people need to take revenge and take over the world, but this time he's years ahead of his main MCU counterpart. Now he frames the Wakandans for Tony Stark's death, leading to General Ross to take control of Stark Industries in order to force them to go ahead and build the army of vibranium drones, which Killmonger will lead to Wakanda, and they're basically using Tony Stark's name as the call to war. Pepper once again suspects Killmonger of being responsible for everything that's happened so far, but she's shut down by Ross. So the robot army gets built, and Killmonger goes to the Wakandan barrier with Klaue. He kills Klaue and walks him to Wakanda proper, just as he did in Black Panther to gain the Wakandans' trust. Now, T'Challa's father, T'Chaka, being slightly naive, believes Killmonger's story and accepts him with open arms, to which Killmonger responds by telling him that they need to prepare for the drone army. He comes up with a plan to open the barrier, allowing the drones in, and then closing the barrier, blocking the satellites and the Jarvis AI from being able to control the drones. And again, King T'Chaka trusts Killmonger. And to be fair, the plan works exactly as he said, but he has his own remote control that he uses to turn the drones on again, leading to a battle. Interestingly, it seems that at this point, the Queen Mother was also the general of the Dora Milaje, and she actually leads the battle against the drones. It seems like they're gonna lose, but Killmonger ends up jumping in after giving a poor man's Wakanda forever, and after a long fought battle, the Wakandans are triumphant, gaining Killmonger the trust of Wakanda. He ends up getting to see that sunset that he always wanted to see, and after pledging his service to the kingdom, T'Chaka gives Killmonger the heart-shaped herb, making him the next Black Panther. Just as in the movie, he goes to the plane of his ancestors, but instead of seeing his father, he actually sees T'Challa, who warns Killmonger about how power will eventually get the best of him. Back in America, Ross announces to Pepper his plan to fire a bunch of Jericho missiles at Wakanda in the hopes that they can wipe it out. But when she goes into Stark's old office, Shuri is sitting there and she spills the beans on everything that's happened, revealing that she knows that Killmonger killed both T'Challa and Tony Stark. So it seems like they're going to work together on this to hopefully expose Killmonger, but then the episode ends. So a huge cliffhanger there, and definitely the worst cliffhanger of the season so far. I mean, come on, you're not going to show us what Killmonger ends up doing? As for my thoughts on the episode, it was really interesting for a good while up until I realized that Killmonger was basically just doing what he did in Black Panther. I mean, it's not like I thought he was going to start up the Avengers with Tony Stark or something. I'm just surprised that even with having Tony Stark and the US military on his side, that he didn't attempt more. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought he knew that his father was killed by his uncle. So why wouldn't he try to kill his uncle and take the throne, unless he thinks he can influence him? Or maybe he's just biding his time, earning Wakanda's trust enough so that when he does kill T'Chaka, that nobody suspects him. That's kind of a theme of this episode, is like every 5 minutes that he was turning on somebody. You know, he was undercover in the 10 Rings, turned on them, got friendly with Tony Stark, eventually killed him, but not before working with Klaue to lure Black Panther, kill him and Rhodey, get the US military to turn on Wakanda, and infiltrate Wakanda to turn them against the US. Killmonger is basically the MCU version of Palpatine from Star Wars. On the outside, he seems like a reasonable guy who just wants to do good in the world, but in reality, he's playing both sides of this war against each other to give himself a greater standing in the world. I think this episode is tied for second place for me with the zombies episode. The cliffhanger was better, but I still enjoy the zombie genre a lot more. Don't get me wrong, the plot was definitely engaging. For the first 10 minutes or so, I genuinely thought that Killmonger was going to become a good guy in this alternate universe. And just like I said with the zombies episode, I really hope that there is some sort of resolution with this universe. I hate that we may never know what the actual end goal of Killmonger is, especially with how naive T'Chaka seems to be. Like, at any second, Killmonger is going to turn around and kill him, and he doesn't know it. It's almost like watching a horror movie, but not seeing the part where the bad thing actually happens, even though you know that it's coming. That being said, I'm not sure what they're doing with these new trailers for What If that have been coming out, But the first few episodes, the trailers were actually the trailer for the next episode. Whereas now they're just showing us more and more of the multiversal Avengers. So really not sure what they're doing there. But let me know what you guys think about this episode in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. I'll see you all next time. Bye.